Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session called Which Comes First, Migration or Modernization? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the considerations to think about when you're moving to the cloud. I'm joined with Keisha Garcia, VP of Digital Foundations Programs at BP. Keisha, would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. Thank you, Wesley, and thank you for having me. As you've said, Keisha Garcia, I have been at BP for 14 years and have been in the energy industry for over 20 plus years, doing large system implementations and also portfolio program management, along with a myriad of other jobs across the industry as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for doing that. And I'm Wesley Story. I'm an enterprise strategist here at AWS, working with executives to help share experiences for how the cloud can actually help them increase their speed and agility while devoting more of their resources to customers and customer experiences. With that being said, Keisha, would you like to jump in a little bit? And can you tell me a little bit about BP's story around digital transformation?
So digital transformation and our story as it relates to cloud transformation started back in around 2016 when one of our executives declared us as cloud first. And after that was declared, it was some decisions made around some of the people that were some of the products that we were going to partner with and decided to basically take it from there and kick things off with determining how we were going to migrate to the cloud.
And was there a driving factor behind migrating to the cloud? For example, cost that forced the change or anything like that?
So initially, our driving factors were around technology, trying to ensure that we were doing the latest and greatest innovative activity around our infrastructure. Also looking at our cost over time and the fixed cost and trying to understand how do we optimize those a bit. So initially, we really started this off with more so of an IT technology cost optimization focus, and then eventually transitioned into actually where it needed to be, given the fact that we're not a technology company, we're an oil and gas company who partners with our business to accomplish our overall strategic goals. We had to realign to ensure that we were focused on the commercial value that we needed to add along with our business strategy.
No, that makes sense. And BP brings a lot to the table. In fact, one of the things that's pretty exciting that BP's working on is their renewable energy program. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how the cloud helps enable that?
Our new CEO, Bernard Looney, introduced our new strategy and approach to reinventing ourselves as a company. So not necessarily a program or a one-off action, but really truly reinventing ourselves and moving away from being known as an oil and gas company to an energy company. And that was with a focus on reducing our carbon footprint, but mainly and focused on driving our ambition to be net zero by 2050 in alignment with the Paris Agreement. So we have totally just revamped and are in the process of rebuilding our entire organization operating model and what we do and how we do it to meet those goals and ambitions. And the way that what our program or the program that I lead in moving to cloud and technology and innovation plays a part in that is the fact that it is foundational and it is key for us to become modern and digitalize our entire state, as well as innovate in automation. Innovation and automation is absolutely key and to the forefront of making our ambitions become real and meeting those strategies.
Those are fantastic things, but you used a key word, which is modernization. So let's come back to that and pull that thread a little bit, because we teed this topic up with a pretty provocative thought around modernization versus of migration, which comes first. Do you have an opinion on that? Which is it an either or is there another way to look at it that you'd like to share?
Yes, I do have an opinion on that, much like I pretty much have an opinion on a lot of things, but I am pretty passionate around believing that modernization and migrations actually go together as a partnership. But I also think that it really varies depending upon your landscape and your situation, and that needs to be assessed and determined as to what you and what your company may decide needs to happen based on your landscape. And for us, when looking across our landscape and what in the state that our applications were in, as well as our infrastructure, it just made sense to do modernization and transformation or migrations in parallel with one another. It didn't make sense to do them separate. But once we really looked at the fact that we're not a technology shop, we run and operate a business, and we need to also ensure that we are aligning and understanding the objectives, the overall end goals, and why it's important for us to do what we need to do. So for me, taking a step back and understanding our situation and where we were and where our business is trying to go and what our overall objectives and goals were, again, it just made sense to not just do a lift and shift or just a straight migrations without considering what your technical debt you build up, the risk, all of the objectives and the things that are important to not just you from a technology perspective, or not just us from a technology perspective, but what was important to our business.
That makes sense. And to introduce a little bit of debate here, which I know you're perfectly okay with, when I was at Cisco as their divisional CIO, we made similar decisions, right? We had a lot of long tooth, legacy systems that ran our business. They were the lifeblood of the organization. And we knew many of those systems, we just weren't going to be able to afford to, rewrite millions of lines of code, right, on a big mega budget. So for us, where possible, we would kind of reverse engineer components and migrate those components to the cloud. You might call that modernization, right? Not lift and shift, but modernization, because we're taking component by component, building out new modern capabilities, using microservices, new data types, things like that. But we also had situations where, let's say we had an environment where it was aging and it was end of life and things like that. And we were facing a major hardware purchase to get that hardware back up and, compliant. In those cases, we would pick things and do like a lift, shift, and transform approach, which I'm a huge fan of personally. Lift, shift, and transform. Note I didn't say leave it alone, right? Because that's the old way we used to do things in IT. Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys approached how you would make the decision versus is it going to be migration? Is it going to be lift and shift? Did you take a different approach than I did, as you mentioned?
So for us, given the fact that we were dealing with a huge estate of 10,000 plus servers, 8,000 plus application instances across 109 or plus different countries around the globe, and 8 large mega data centers around the world as well. Everything, there's so many varying and competing priorities and things that you need to take into consideration. So we looked at that and tried to understand what are the largest risks, and again, the objectives that we're trying to meet and the risks that are associated with those objectives. And therefore, we could then break it down to understand what then brings into scope scope and prioritization of what we need to do when, where first, and in what order we need to do it. And with that being said, you have to look at, okay, we're dealing with systems, we're dealing with the estate. We can't disrupt operations. We also have to ensure that our estate is basically up to par. From an infrastructure perspective, we have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to address cybersecurity threats. We're also doing things in a time frame that makes sense as far as how fast innovation and technology changes. So things needed to move quite rapidly. And so we know that you get better as you do iterative approaches and trial and error. So we took the approach of, one, doing the assessments to understand what needed to go first based on prioritization around some of the things that I talked about around maintaining operations, risk of end of serviceable life and what those threats are, and how do we need to address those, and what are our low-hanging fruit that we need to be able to address first so that we can cut our teeth on things and get faster and faster as we go. So we identified the simple applications that would be on our low rating as far as operational threat or risk. And those are the ones that we wanted to go after first to get those done as quickly as we possibly can. So those are some of the things that we did, and that's how we chose to get started, because you just got to jump. We could have met about it, talked about it, discussed it, rewrote cost objectives and what if scenarios all day, every day. But until you actually take the plunge and jump and start to do it and get in there somewhere, again, cutting your teeth on the more simpler things to be able to then start to build up your capability, your momentum, and the knowledge and the know-how, then it just doesn't happen. So that's how we chose to go about it first.
Keisha, I love that answer. And in fact, I have to admit that when I talk to a number of customers today that are early in their journey, the biggest piece of advice I give them is don't suffer analysis paralysis. I love that part you made at the end, because far too many companies try to sit there and plan out the perfect migration or the perfect modernization effort. And quite frankly, they haven't cut their teeth, as you said, on the easier low-hanging fruit first to start to build up the skills necessary to do the job. To that end, when you think about some of the factors that you considered influencing your decision on whether you modernize or whether you migrate and the approaches you take, did you find that your approach changed as your capabilities as an organization grew? Because I can say, like, even in my own case, when we were early in our journey, the way we did it was very different than when we were later in our journey, when we had that muscle built up. I'd be curious how you think about that.
I started out doing a smaller subset of this program with a smaller business before I moved into and got promoted to move into doing the cloud transformation program holistically from an enterprise perspective for the entire organization. We partnered with AWS to come in and build the platforms. But again, our capabilities, we needed to get those up to snuff and actually build the team's confidence around the technology, learn the product, working and partnering with AWS to utilize their training and everything else from a platform perspective. Once we got that down packed, we then needed to understand how to consume the product. So there was a lot of, again, iterative work that had to happen in order for us to get ourselves up to a pace. And then the shift from 2018 to where we are now. I mean, at this point, I feel like we're running like a well-oiled machine, but that's because of all the iterative approaches and the iterative approach, building up of the capability of our team, ensuring that we partnered with the right resources, with the right people, be that either for the training aspect of it or understanding the program, understanding the options, and as well as the migrations. And to me, the more variety and or inclusion that you have of different mechanisms and different options that you have available to you, the more you have at your exposure to be able to then leverage those things to continue to get better and improve. And again, where I was a month ago to where we are now, I'm learning something every day is different. But yes, absolutely can see the difference from where we were when we started and over those times.
Yeah, that learning journey is something, I'll tell you. I have to agree with you on that. So Keisha, changing gears a little bit, what are some of the benefits that BP's realized from the efforts you've made to move to the cloud?
Sure. So we initially had identified the obvious benefits that we were actually going after from an objective perspective, which was optimizing our fixed costs by exiting our data centers and alleviating ourselves from the lease agreements and the fixed cost of leases. And then, of course, as we moved off of being on-prem, there's the energy cost elimination and then lowering our carbon footprint by getting rid of or exiting our mega data centers and eliminating those costs. But some of the other benefits that we definitely gained by doing the modernization and migrations in parallel was to address our cybersecurity risk and threats as it related to end of serviceable life hardware, operating systems, database versions, all those things that we were able to also accomplish as well as eliminating the need to have to upgrade infrastructure as things came to end of serviceable life. There's also the benefit that we had around lowering our carbon footprint and helping along our journey and our aspirations for meeting our net zero ambitions, as well as the cost benefit of all of the overall cost that we had around support and hosting charges that we also were incurring. There's also the benefit that we get around upskilling our capabilities and our employees and investing that time, effort, and again, development of our employees and allowing them to really get knowledge around the latest and greatest technologies, working in a more innovative environment, which is, again, making them extremely happy in the sense of we're providing the excitement, the knowledge and capability, which most people, when you talk to them, when you're in an area where you're able to be creative, innovative, work with a team that's moving at pace or at a fast pace and still learn and grow and develop your skill sets, it makes it even more of a fun place and a great place to work. And that's one of the key things that we were doing, considering the fact that we want to put safety and people first, putting people first, making them happy about working on those innovative and latest and greatest technologies and tools, on top of the benefits that we were able to realize with the company and from a technology perspective, and ultimately hitting our bottom line, the commercial benefits that we've realized as well, and making sure that our environment is evergreen, and evergreen being that it's always, again, on its latest and greatest. It's easier to also build off of the time to market. Long before, when we had a big infrastructure, in order to do a project and or meet the needs of our stakeholders and the business and what was being asked of us to deliver on technology and or change applications or move different things around, it would take years because we'd have to order all types of infrastructure and the cost that was associated with that. Again, the capital associated with it, along with the time it would take to get things in, to build, to scale, took an enormous amount of time. That has been cut in half, or even more so, or even more, or even faster. We were able to do things, and our time to market with solutions are night and day quicker. But the biggest benefit that I can truly tell you that we didn't realize, and you don't realize these things until you're in crunch time or emergency, is the fact that we were willing to go out on a limb, take that risk, and move at the pace that we were able to move at, and moving all of our critical applications onto the cloud, along with all of the enterprise infrastructure and enterprise platforms to the cloud. And we were doing that, again, at pace, making those decisions, getting it done. And because of that, once the pandemic hit and we had to all work remotely, it was a seamless process to be able to do so, because again, we have people working all around the globe. To be able to connect to our networks, our systems, and to be able to work seamlessly no matter where you are, because all of our critical applications and our infrastructure is all on the cloud, those to me are the priceless benefits.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So cost savings, agility, and then disaster recovery and business continuity at a level you couldn't achieve before. That's the kind of news that people want to hear. With that said, I'd love to pivot to another thing around alignment. So how do you guys think about alignment and address the alignment of the transformation and the migration plans with business leaders and folks like that, specifically the CEO and CFO?
Along with the benefits of being able to, again, flex time to market with solutions, scale, capacity, and capability. So definitely we're seeing those gains, and that's ultimately what we were looking to achieve which then brings me into the alignment with our CEOs and CFOs and folks in the C-suite around cloud. Again, with BP, we know that we definitely try and be the best in class at whatever it is that we're doing. But for the most part, we know, and I think, from a working in the trading arena, you start to realize quickly as things change with the market, with things being more margin driven, as well as quickly as you have to shift and be able to align with the market and do things bigger, faster. The only way that you're going to be able to do that is to leverage technology and to be digital and to automate and to be as efficient, lean, and effective as you can be. So again, getting with and understanding and working with each of your executives to understand what is our overall strategic goals and aspirations, and agreeing how are we going to get there. And once you start to look at that and you realize where technology is going and where we need to go from the renewable energy to all of the things that we aspire to do, that's underpinned by technology and being able to have the right foundations around technology, which then introduces your cloud products and solutions. So again, figuring out where the commonality and where the objectives are that your businesses are trying to meet. And those are the things that you align to. And once you do that and you work together with your folks in the C-suite to really ensure that everything that you're doing is driving towards those things. Number one, safety. That's number one on my CEO's list. Number two is meeting our aspirations and goals and making life better for the environment, for people, for the world. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that by utilizing and leveraging technology. And what do we need to do in order to do that? What are the things? What do we need to shore up? How do we get the best in class capabilities, capabilities in our asset, which are our people, and upskill those folks, change those mindsets, get everyone together and on the same page to meet the same goals. And again, bringing everybody along for the journey. That's important. Transparency, communication, and allowing people to own accountability for the overall outcomes and end steps and endpoints. And how do we get there together? And we meet those goals in alignment. It can't be something that you're doing from an IT for IT standpoint, or just looking at the siloed objectives. You have to look at this as what's the overall and collective objective of your business, and how do we make sure that we're continuing to stay aligned to that.
That's fantastic. Credibility and trust built on delivering the things you say you're going to deliver. But also, I love that part about getting a mutual expectation back and a commitment back. I want to sneak one more question in. I know we're almost out of time, but are there any technologies you're looking forward to, especially, in your cloud migration, given how complex and varied your environment is?
Yeah. So now that we're starting to round the corner of getting complete with all of our legacy estate and a large part of our mega data centers, got that running like a well-oiled machine, I'd like to think. And we've gotten thousands of cloud migrations underneath our belt with large amounts of varying amounts of transformation, but getting bigger, better every day. Now we're starting to move into the exciting realm for me, which is our regional data centers, which are all around across the globe, as well as we are restructuring our business, again, moving away from being an oil and gas company to an energy company with renewable energy and the environment in mind. Therein lies and introduces a whole new complexity around how do we leverage technology and how do we make sure that we're connected across the space and integrated and working together as a business to provide solutions. And with that comes IoT, comes AI, comes your digital twin solutions. Those are the things that I'm really excited about and really looking forward to seeing all the creativity and innovation that comes out of AWS and things that get introduced at reInvent, to be able to see how we're going to be able to bring those fruitions, or bring those aspirations to fruition with the new technology that's coming out around, again, some of your edge compute capability. Those are the things that I'm really excited about, because it's coming first and forefront now with intelligent operations, wanting to automate a lot of things and drive that efficiency utilizing that technology. And so for me, that's where it gets interesting, and I don't want to stop, because it's so fascinating how you get to be out on a rig and you're able to do certain things without physically having to be there, because you're able to use, digital trend solutions, edge case technology and capability. So that's where I'm really excited as to where that's going to take us here soon.
That's all for our session today. What comes first, migration or modernization? And I'd like to thank Keisha for her participation, and BP for letting her participate, obviously. Thanks for sharing your story. It was a tremendous story. I loved hearing it, and I'm sure our audience did as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.